To Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram, Director of Product Marketing at VMware, and I'm joined today by Jörg and Brandon again to cover some more vRealize operations. So Jörg, just a quick intro for you, for those who haven't seen you.
Hey, Jörg, I'm a Technical Product Manager at VMware.
Thanks, Jörg. And Brandon.
Brandon Gordon, Technical Marketing for vRealize Operations.
Excellent. Okay, and this is really, I think, the third episode we've done on vRealize operations now, and final one where we're going to discuss another key kind of value use case, which is using vRealize operations for assessment purposes, prior migration, and how that can help service providers with migrating customers to their cloud. So just before we start, I mean, just if you think of the way that service providers today do migration, they use a whole load of usually freeware tools, piece together some sort of report, and then add, a 30%, maybe more, maybe less, layer of fact to the contract to allow for any, unseen incidences and challenges with applications that may be more complicated than they realize when migrating to the cloud. That's typically been my experience of how service providers have traditionally done it. And Jörg, have you seen anything different, or is that pretty much the way it goes?
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it goes. I mean, there's a lot of homemade tooling with, for example, Power CLI, where you can analyze the existing and the size of virtual machines, but it's very basic and usually only at all covers the configuration of the virtual machines, but not any actual utilization of the virtual machines. So it's really more some, gathering inventory and then creating some reports based on that. And that's then used for the calculation of the size of the environment that the service provider wants to offer to their tenants.
Yeah, and I think the key kind of values I see now is kind of twofold, right? First of all, using vRealize operations for cloud, explicitly for cloud, this makes it super easy to kind of drop in an appliance into a customer premise, pretty much instantly start getting all the metrics that you need to assess the environment. And whilst some might argue, well, there's a cost associated with that. Yes, there is, but there's also a cost associated with making mistakes in your assessment, which, if you are adding more kind of financial, what's the word I'm looking for, leeway into your contract, then you're going to be able to come into that contract with a bit more certainty, which means potentially you can take out some of that fat and become much more competitive in your costs. So I think traditionally, if you had vRealize, this was a kind of a big lift because you had to kind of deploy it on premise, and that would obviously require quite a lot of work to do, take some time. And if you're in an environment with multiple other potential service providers bidding for the same customer, that can be quite a challenge. But here with vRealize Operations Cloud, we have a kind of a real opportunity, don't we, Brandon, to kind of make this a lot easier.
So yeah, but vRealize Operations, it is very with vRealize Operations Cloud, it is very easy. All you need to do is deploy a cloud proxy into the customer's environment, and then you just connect into vCenter and start collecting the data. You don't have to worry about actual deployment of vRealize Operations at all. It is very simple to do, just with the deployment of the cloud proxy, and it's fairly lightweight as well. So yeah, right. That is very easy to get it up and going.
Is there any communications that need to be done in terms of firewall changes or something like that on the customer premise?
It depends. The cloud proxy only needs an outbound TCP 443, so it's all HTTPS traffic, and it's only outbound. So it is very simple, but it depends on the customer. If they allow outbound internet traffic, then it'll be fine. If they don't, then there's a list of host names that need to be allowed. So it can be restricted if necessary. It just depends on the customer's security requirement. But it is very simple because there's no inbound traffic required. So,
okay.
And it does work through NAT, so there's no no concerns about that as well.
Right, and from a kind of a metering perspective, they would only be charged for the time that the assessment was actually happening, right?
Yeah. So the way it is with vRealize Operations Cloud is you're only charged for basically what you are actually monitoring. So while you're monitoring, that's considered, each virtual machine would be considered an OSI. So if you only want to monitor a subset, you can do that as well. and restrict it to only monitor a piece of the environment. So you don't have to, you don't have to monitor everything. So that you can get fine grained into that as well. It's doable.
Yeah, and do they have to? Is there kind of a minimum time scale that they need to deploy the proxy on-prem for it to actually collect a decent amount of data for the assessment?
So, in order to get recommendations, those happen pretty quick. Within like 10 to 15 minutes, you start getting recommendations. But the question is whether you would trust that data. Typically you would want to go through like a business cycle. So it kind of depends on the customer. And as a general rule, I'd say 30 days is probably good, but if it needs to be shorter, it can be shorter. It's just the risk of not necessarily knowing all of the business cycle information. Could be higher if you don't, the less data you have. So
yeah,
while you can do less, more is better.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And I guess this goes also hand in hand with deploying the vRealize Network Insight Cloud appliance as well into that environment to get visibility of all the network and security aspects in there.
Yeah, and you get to discover. You can discover all the applications and the dependencies, and there's a lot of great stuff you can get from Network Insight as well. And there's an integration between the two products, so you can if you discover the applications in vRealize Network Insight Cloud, you can actually see those same applications in vRealize Operations Cloud as well. That's really cool to have that same the same view from both perspectives as well.
And if I was to kind of deploy, as I say, I deployed it for 30 days, can I keep that segment, let's call it that customer segment, separate from the rest of the stuff that I'm actually monetizing and serving out to my customers now?
Yeah, so the way vRealize Operations Cloud is deployed, basically the customer gets a dedicated instance. So that instance that is used by that customer is for that customer.
Okay.
So yeah, it'll stay the same. You don't have to worry about other customers or anything like that.
Okay, cool. I can't think of any more questions. Can we have a peek into the assessment? Unless Jorg, got anything else to add?
I just have since Brendan said the flexibility that you have to connect the cloud proxy to vCenter to figure out or to decide which of the virtual machines or which of the inventory should actually be part of that assessment. That of course gives a lot of flexibility for the service providers and offers a full range from like an assessment of the overall infrastructure for a customer that is really dedicated to move pretty much completely to the cloud, to whatever cloud offering that might be. And you as the service provider rather have perhaps some professional services helping them analyzing and assessing and planning the migration. But on the other hand, it's also possible to narrow that down, for example, to just a virtual machine or a bunch of virtual machines, a resource pool, perhaps a folder of a certain business group, for example, that's dedicated to move to your environment as a cloud provider. And then you rather work just with that team within the customer to have like a part of the infrastructure monitored and assessed.
Yeah, and that is a pretty common thing I hear from partners as well. Is they don't necessarily want to monitor or an entire environment. They're more concerned about certain ones. It could be these certain ones have different SLAs or different requirements. So there could be different perspectives you're looking at those. So yeah, it is a pretty common thing that I hear as well.
Okay, and I guess also you can, by doing this assessment, and if you kind of leave the solution running while you do the migration, you'll get a nice before and after picture as well, especially from the sustainability stuff, right?
Oh, definitely, yes.
As we covered last time.
Yeah, we did.
All right, so let's have a little look around and see what the assessment dashboards look like.
All right, let me share my screen.
Okay.
So I'm logged in now to vRealize Operations Cloud. So so what I'm going to do is show you how to find it. So you can see here on the quick start page, we have run assessments. So you can see we have the vRealize Cloud Management Assessment. So that is the new assessment tool. I know some partners may be aware of the VOA, the vSphere Optimization Assessment. that's that's been replaced by this cloud management assessment. That's been replaced for a while now. It's been over a year now that we've been using the cloud management assessment. So so it's just a matter of clicking here, and this takes you to the landing page for the cloud management assessment. So the big difference here is now we have this kind of broken down by basically the environments that we're looking at, and then kind of have kind of use case driven. So this is the first section here is looking at vSphere and VCF. So this is, if you're looking for just straight up vSphere data or VCF data, either way, you can go in here, and we've broken up into basically the two main stages here. So the planning. So this is where you're doing kind of the assessment, like you're planning for a migration. So these are the key information that you would see when you want to do that, do a migration planning scenario. So it's just a matter of clicking on here. There's some verbiage about what this particular dashboard is about, and then click on Launch Dashboard, and it takes you right to the dashboard. So in my environment, I've got a bunch of stuff here. I can go and find. So I just selected the data center. So this is the one data center that I want to look at, and I can start seeing what's going on in this data center. So I can see how many VMs I've got in there, how many are running, how many hosts, my overcommit ratios, how many VMs per host, how much my CPU and memory overcommit ratios. I can see my total configured resources. So this is how many vCPUs, how much memory, and how much disk space is actually allocated to the virtual machines. And then we can compare this to what's actually being used. So this is the aggregate usage from CPU, memory, and disk space. So these are the real high level numbers, make it easy for you to go and do say this is what we want to size towards. But we also have a detailed list down here. So all the virtual machines, we can go and export those, and then you can do other stuff with it if you need to. There's a little export button here. But this, like I said, this dashboard is kind of just the high level, like I said, environment overview. This gets you the big picture, and then we can go back and look at the next dashboard. This is for right sizing. So this is where you can go and look at it from a right sizing perspective. So we can pick. Let me find that same data center. So in here, this lists my oversized and undersized virtual machines. And it tells me my recommendation. So this is the one where it's good to have more data. The more data you have, the better the recommendations will be. And this is something that's kind of enticing for the users. They can choose if they wanted to right size the machines when they do the migration to the cloud as a way of potentially saving money. It kind of depends. Some cases you may want to just migrate as is. It depends on the timeline. But we have the tools here that actually give you those recommendations. But you can go in and look at select a VM and look at the details for that specific VM. What it's configured with, what the historical usage has been, what the recommendations are, such.
And sorry, Brandon, just that predicted cost per month there, I saw that's based on the data center it's in, some of the values that you plug in around cost for energy and things like that, or is that something else?
Yeah, so vRealize operations by default will calculate the cost of the environment. So it uses it uses what out of the box, it uses what we call reference costs. So these are like industry standard numbers, MSRP and such, for the infrastructure to determine the cost of the virtual machine. You can go in and customize that to make it exactly what was paid for the servers and stuff, to make it even more accurate. But yeah, this is using basically the cost configuration in vRealize operations to calculate the cost of the virtual machine. So it'll calculate the cost of the clusters, host, VMs, etc.
So based on this, can I see then? Sorry, carry on.
Well, I was going to say, this is cost. So I know partners are used to the tenant app, and tenant app uses price. So I just wanted to make sure that they understand there's a difference between cost and price. Cost is how much it actually costs basically based on the expenses, how much it costs to run the virtual machine, versus price is what you want to charge for the virtual machine. They're not necessarily the same thing. They can be configured different. So just so you're aware, this is showing cost, not price.
Okay.
And so again, just to remember, that's the the cost of the virtual machine still running on-prem at the customer's data center.
Yep.
So not to be confused.
So, and this is where you could do that comparison. This is the cost of the VMs running on-prem, and then you can compare that to your cost when you make the proposal to the customer. You can actually show, could do a comparison of your price, what you're going to charge versus the costs for them running on-prem. So yeah, this could give you that visibility.
This report here is just telling me what's kind of oversubscribed, undersubscribed, and how to right size. But is there then a comparison of like, if I went from 15 hosts to 11 hosts, this would be the saving from a cost projection perspective?
So you can do that in what if scenarios. Oops, wrong one. So under these what if scenarios, you can do these this type of analysis. What if I, like here, adding a host, removing a host, or adding this is a vSAN host, how to remove those, and you can do those what if scenarios. What if you shrunk the cluster? What if you added these virtual machines? What if you take these virtual machines away? You can do all these different scenarios, and then you can stack them together and see what all they look like together. So yeah, that kind of analysis can be done as well.
I was going to say, because the service provider obviously at this point hasn't purchased the target hardware perhaps to run the customer on, so he's going to be wanting to know, what is the expected environment I can run this on? What can I get away with and still provide the service without impacting an SLA? I mean, the customer may want dedicated, but if you're looking at shared infrastructure, shared resources, you need to be able to right size appropriately. So they would definitely do this then in the what if scenarios.
Yeah, that's where you do it.
All right. Cool.
Go back to cloud management assessment. So the other one on the planning side, looking from a migration perspective, this one here is what we call the application grouping. So this one, like we were talking about before with the vRealize Network Insight Cloud. So if you had vRealize Network Insight Cloud, doing the discovery, finding the applications in the environment, you could actually see those discovered applications listed here. Or you can go and manually define the applications in vRealize Operations Cloud. You can use service discovery to find the application. There's many different ways of finding these applications. The Network Insight Cloud is obviously is the best because it's actually looking at the network traffic. But the idea is we can actually see those discovered applications in here, and then we can look at what makes up the application. Let me find one here that looks a bit more interesting. There we go. So you can see here is application that was discovered with Network Insight Cloud. It's got two tiers, so database tier and application tier, and then we can see the virtual machines that belong to those tiers. And then we can even go down and look at the specifics for those virtual machines. What's actually configured on those. So like if you want to target a specific application, do the migration like an application by application basis. This kind of helps you, dive in and look at it, from that perspective. I think it's really good. Once you have the high level plan, you want to do the migrate to another cloud. This helps you get down into the specifics of, okay, I want to migrate the shopping cart application. What do I need to do? Okay, here's these two VMs. Let's go grab those, and we start migrating those two, and do them together. That's kind of the thought process, with this particular dashboard.
Yeah, this is great. So this is just looking at that application hierarchy there. So when a service provider discovers the applications within the customer environment, then they would be able to see instantly a view of the status. So, if there's tons of alarms, the CPU is massively oversubscribed, there's problems with the app that may cause me to have issues when I do the migration. He can then prioritize the migration, the amount of time he gives to that application to migrate it, but also potentially cost as well, because it might involve reconfiguration to sort out a lot of the issues as you go forward.
Yeah, and typically, like, you'd want to look at the health. Make sure are the VMs performing well. Is the application healthy? I mean, you don't necessarily want to touch an unhealthy application. You want to make sure it's okay before you move it, unless the purpose of moving it is to make it healthy. But you don't want to try to minimize as much as risk as possible. But it kind of helps you with that visibility. into that. And like I said, you can see because you have the application level visibility, you can see the alerts from all the way down. So if you had, say, application monitoring, say, the databases within the virtual machines, or maybe it had Apache, or some other applications running in the virtual machines that you monitor, you can actually see that all the way down. So it's really helpful, give you a lot of visibility.
This is also a very important tool that helps you to create a lot of more, let's say, consulting stickiness with your customer, because you very often can show them situations or dependencies that they might not be aware of, or that they might not have documented properly, and that would otherwise be forgotten during the migration or during the migration planning. So this acts as another level that gives you technically a lot of information to plan the migration properly, and even before that, to really create some very well fit business offering for your customer that fits that, for example, that application that they want to move, or that the set of applications that they want to move, rather than, for example, like you usually get with the large hyperscalers, where they just offer some standard like menu of virtual machines or resources, and then the customer might get way too much of resources and pay way too much for these resources. So you can offer some very specific and well-tailored solution and offerings to your tenant.
Yeah, I guess if you've got if you've got specific databases that are underneath there, or specific web app technologies, you can then utilize your resources and assign your resources internally from a service provider's perspective, put those DB experts on that migration task for that application. They're going to know what needs to be done, and that is going to make it really sticky with their customer. And also one of the things, and I guess, Brandon, is a question to you, one of the things I hear from customers a lot is lots of customers, well, it's two camps, right? Lots of customers say they've done a migration to cloud already, and there's lots of customers who are still in the early stages of migrating to cloud. For the ones who have kind of done a lot of the lift already, they've kind of done data migrations to SaaS services, for example, the low-hanging fruit, basically. And what they're left with is very complicated legacy. Whereas the other side of the house is, it's probably a lot simpler, less legacy, because they tend to be smaller customers, whereas these guys have big kind of custom-made stuff. What can this offer in terms of assessment of legacy apps? Would that be a case of plugging in some Blue Medora, well, actually not called Blue Medora anymore, but the management packs, and getting a deeper visibility?
It's the True Visibility Suite. So there are quite a few applications that are supported with the True Visibility Suite. So it covers a lot. It goes from the infrastructure. There's applications, there's databases. There's a lot of different components to it. So there's a lot of stuff that is covered. And I know we also just recently announced a beta of the Management Pack Builder. So if what you want to monitor has a REST API, you can use the Management Pack Builder to go and create your own management pack. And basically, it'll you can tell it how to authenticate, how to do the different API calls and associate them with objects. And it's kind of you can go through it pretty quick and actually create your own management pack. Like I said, it's in beta. It's available for people to sign up for. It's pretty cool to be able to do that. And like I said, it just anything that has a REST API, you should be able to bring it in.
That sounds like a real differentiator, because a lot of the legacy applications may have some sort of API which they could then abstract into a REST API, potentially write a API gateway for it, if you like. Just a quick question though, the True Visibility Suite add-ons in vRealize Operations Cloud, are they additional cost items?
So the infrastructure ones have been made where they're included. So what used to be the standard edition for the True Visibility Suite, all of those are now basically available at no extra charge. Okay. The advanced and enterprise levels, there is additional charge for those. But you can install all of the True Visibility Suite. Management packs are available in vRealize Operations Cloud, so you can install them and use them. You just need additional licensing for the advanced and enterprise level.
All right. And would that be in the same kind of per OSI time-based consumption?
It's I believe that's the case. I'm not an expert on the true visibility licensing. I believe it's still by OSI. I think it has to match like the number of OSIs that you are monitoring. So if you had, so you're monitoring 100 OSIs of vSphere, you would need 100 OSIs worth of the TBS licensing.
So you buy them in packs of volume then, yeah.
Yeah, so it matches. But there's also another, what's called technology packs. I'm not too sure on how that one works. Like I say, it's something I cover typically. So I can get some more details and share it with you if there's interest.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. We can sort that one out later. Okay, cool.
So I don't know that we need to walk through all of these, but so we already showed the planning pieces. So that was the kind of the assessment from a migration perspective. Now this section down here is managed. So these are all the different things you would do from a management perspective. Performance one I think is pretty good. So on performance, this is like you want to say you want to look at the performance of a specific application, so or environment. So come on, get the page to load. There we go. So this is looking at it from a cluster perspective. So we can see the performance of this environment is not so great. We can see we've got it's like a bunch of CPU ready going on in this particular environment. Performance is going between red and green. But the point is we can go in here and start looking at the details on what's going on. Here's the host level performance, the virtual machine level performance. So we can go down and find individual virtual machines and see how they're doing. So you can see this environment has a lot of ready time issues. Look at that, 2% ready. I guess that's what you get in looking at labs. And then the last one here is looking at from a storage perspective. So looking at the data store. So you can see we've got some high latency on this particular data store. Something very bad going on here. I don't know what that is.
And I guess this is where you need the installation over a longer duration, because this looks like this data is, when you're calculating percentiles and things like that, you need to have a fair volume of data to do that.
So you can see here, this was one spike that happened. So the worst latency was just a one-time thing. But whatever happened there was looks pretty bad. It could have been, I don't know. It's hard to speculate. I have to go and do some research. That was a few days ago. Anyway, so like I said, we don't know that we need to go through all of these, but so there's capacity dashboards. So looking at the capacity of the clusters and virtual machines, et cetera. The cost one. So this is like what we were talking about, looking at a cost assessment. So this is the costs running on-prem. And this is kind of the data you could use to help create the justification. When you do the comparison to run in your own cloud, you can kind of use this cost data to actually do the ROI or TCO analysis for a migration. Configuration. So this is looking at the configuration of the environment. So the hosts and the VMs and such. Compliance. This is an important one for some customers. There may be specific compliance standards that apply, like HIPAA, PCI, and you can go and look at the compliance of the environment based on different standards. So whether the target environment needs to have compliance or the source environment has certain compliance, you can go and look at the compliance of the environment. And then we have vSAN. So this is looking at the performance of vSAN. I don't know how much that necessarily applies from a migration perspective. And then NSX. Again, I'm not sure that does too much when you're planning a migration, but it does. You do have some good data that can look at your network throughput and transmits packets per second, transmit rates, stuff like that could be useful for sizing the network piece of the environment. Yeah. So, like I said, all these are kind of focused on a specific use case, so it should make it easier for you to find exactly what you're looking for. And we do have others here. I know we don't necessarily need to go through all of them, but just kind of call them out here. So there's VMware Cloud and AWS. So this is That's kind of geared towards migrating to VMware Cloud and AWS. So if that's the scenario you're looking for, helping the customer migrate to VMware Cloud and AWS, then these dashboards would be useful to use. They're very similar to the vSphere and VCF ones that I showed previously, but there's a little bit of a VMC spin on it because there's certain limitations and certain things you have to worry about from a VMC versus a vSphere environment.
Right.
And then we have other things like the public cloud. So you can go and see what we monitor for public clouds. So this is showing our native AWS and Azure. But if you have a customer that's mixed, like you were saying before, where some customers maybe have some native public cloud and they also have vSphere clouds, you can monitor both. So we can get the big picture across everything.
Yeah.
So I know that's I know there's a lot here.
Sorry,
hopefully it gives you an idea.
Brandon, is all that public cloud monitoring that I assume is all done by public cloud APIs, and you don't need to deploy anything into that cloud? You just need the credentials to authenticate.
Yep.
That's correct. Yeah. I think this would be really useful, and like you were saying, right, an additional attach to the services that you're providing to start understanding that customer infrastructure they've got on premise, but also the customer infrastructure they're managing in hyperscale cloud. Because most partners, in fact, pretty much all partners have a relationship with one or more hyperscaler vendors today. So, they're more than happy to take on the customer environments typically, and customers tend to be very happy to hand them over.
And to be able to monitor all of it in one system, and to look across all of the clouds, whether it's on-prem, in the partner's cloud or in a hyperscaler cloud, it's great to be able to have all this data together. You can have a single consolidated view. It's great.
Yeah. And what's the extensibility piece there?
So this is the true visibility stuff.
Okay.
So this is a link to some more information about the True Visibility Suite and the management packs available through that. So there's no dashboards here. This is basically just a call out to look at those, just to bring awareness to what's available.
Okay.
So if you are looking at a customer's environment, it definitely encourage you to look at some of those. I can show you real quick. So all of the management packs. So like when you're doing an assessment with a customer, you can go here under integrations and then repository. So this is all of the management packs that are available in vRealize Operations Cloud. So as the admin of vRealize Operations Cloud, you can go in and install these management packs. So you can see we've got a lot in here that's already installed. Basically every True Visibility Suite management pack. And down here on the bottom, you can see here's all the management packs that are not currently installed. So we've got Metatech here, there's NetApp, E-Series, SNMP. There's Cloud Director. I know that one's an important one for partners. So that is, you just go here, click on Git, and it'll go and initiate the install for you. So you don't have to go and find the binaries and do the installation, all that stuff. You just hit Git, and it just goes right through and it does the installation. So when you're doing the assessments, definitely add in as many of these as makes sense for the customer.
Yeah.
The more data you have, the more visibility, the better the story you can tell.
Yeah, definitely. So just to summarize what we've seen then, so partners can utilize vRealize Operations Cloud as an assessment tool. They can set up individual customers as their own instances in vRealize Operations Cloud, deploy a proxy into the customer environment, let it sit there for whatever amount of time, but you're going to be charged the more OSIs it's monitoring and the longer it's monitoring them. But the recommendation would be, as you said, like one business cycle. So find out what the business cycle is from the customer, whether they do monthly stuff or weekly. Use the management packs then to get a bit more data on some of the instances that you might find in the customer environment. Then you've got all of the dashboards you can look at. Click to create those, do some assessment, do some deep dive into what you could take over, do the application grouping priority, perhaps of migration, otherwise per VM, per environment, however you want to cut it. And And if you keep this running, then when the customer migrates, let's say they migrate to the provider cloud, that customer instance of vRealize Operations Cloud will simply the proxy will just be deleted and another proxy we put in the customer environment. Would that be right?
Yeah, so you would want to deploy a cloud proxy in each of the clouds. So the cloud you're migrating from and the cloud you're migrating to. So you can deploy multiple cloud proxies. You just do it in each, and then you would monitor both the on-prem environment and then the target cloud you're going to. You would add those. So when you migrate the virtual machine, if you use HCX to migrate the virtual machine, vRealize Operations Cloud will detect that the VM has been migrated and automatically switch it over to be reparented by the new vCenter. So it'll keep its history and everything. So that's one of the advantages of using HCX to do the migration, is because it will keep that same object and shift it over. So
if most of the providers probably wouldn't be using HCX because obviously it's not compatible with Cloud Director, and it would be an extra cost for them as well, I believe. So using Cloud Director availability, for example, what would be the kind of steps then to make sure that moved across as seamlessly as possible?
So in that case, what would happen is it would basically discover the new virtual machine on the other cloud, and start monitoring it from there. The drawback is you wouldn't have the historical data, so you would essentially have the old virtual machine object, and then you have the new virtual machine object, and each one have their their separate history. What was history of what was on-prem versus the history that's in the cloud. That's what you would see today. Okay,
so that's fine. So that's why it'd be important to run the assessment and get the reports, download those reports, so you've got the kind of before scenario, and then a month later running in your environment, here's the after scenario, and you can
and actually in the cloud management assessment, there is a dashboard that can do a before and after comparison. Let me find that and show you here. This is this one, the performance validation. So on this dashboard, you can actually go in and select a virtual machine. So you pick on the left side, you pick basically the before. You would set your time range. So I can say, let's say February through Monday, and then on the right side, I select the new object. So let me set my time, and I can start this from the first. So let's say the first was when I did my migration. Now I'm doing a comparison. On the left, this is what the performance was of the virtual machine, basically before the migration. And on the right is the performance of the virtual machine after the migration. Okay. So then I can do that side-to-side comparison. This is what it looked like. And even if it ends up being a separate object, with different histories, you can still do that comparison side by side. You can say, before and after, and that helps you, justify, that basically show that the virtual machine wasn't impacted by the performance wasn't impacted by the migration.
Got it. And hopefully they're running much better in the new environment. So happy days.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah, that's the goal. So if you then are in a situation where you're migrating with something like Cloud Direct Availability, you don't have that automation in there. So what will happen is it will discover the new VM as it's moved across. The old VM will go stale in the system, but the report data will still be there for you to do comparison using the time schedules. Right, got it.
Yep.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah,
I think this is great.
The details for that, of course, depend on really the destination architecture. I mean, the metrics and the place of the virtual machine object in the inventory is different if it's being migrated to like a pure dedicated vSphere environment for that tenant, where perhaps you have a single VROps instance for that tenant monitoring their dedicated cloud as well. And it might look a bit different if it's managed by VCD in a shared environment, because then as a service provider, you really have to look into which of these metrics you actually want to show to your tenants, because it is a shared environment. But of course, for you as a service provider, if you use vROps for that, you can create and customize these dashboards and create some reports and even automate these reports out of that, so that even if the customer themselves might not have access to the objects in vSphere, obviously, because that you don't want to give them that in a shared environment where ECD is managing the virtual machines. But you will still be able to create these reports and pre and post migration, the statistics for your tenants with just the objects for this particular tenant.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as the partner, you can actually go in and set up the connection to vCenter, and so you don't have to provide the credentials to the customer, but you can get the granular data from vCenter. So yeah, you can definitely control those permissions and keep it where you still have control, but you can provide that data. That is definitely doable.
Yeah, that's a good idea. If you've got a shared environment and creating that dashboard, that mechanism as well. So that would be something that'd be highly repeatable. You're just going to put in the customer kind of VLANs or whatever it might be, VXLANs that are going to be the target environment and limit their view. Bang, you're going to have a dashboard. Yeah, very cool, very cool. And obviously, if you go into a single tenant environment, then there's nothing to worry about there.
Yep, exactly.
There's one thing about that. When we've seen the performance and capacity planning dashboards for vSphere, over the last minutes, we of course discussed this as part of an assessment situation where the cloud proxy runs on-prem at the customer's side and in the customer's data center. But that same these same dashboards and the same functionality, of course, you can offer as a cloud provider to your dedicated customers, which have a dedicated private cloud, where you give them a dedicated vSphere cluster and hand them over like the administrator keys to the vCenter environment. And then since you're only managing vCenter and the ESX host, it doesn't matter for you how many or which virtual machines they run on that. But it is a lot of value add if you hook into a cloud proxy there and connect the vRops cloud instance for that particular customer, and then offer them these dashboards so they can see what's wrong with their virtual machines that they run, and give them some idea about the performance and the capacity planning.
Yeah, actually, you just reminded me of something, an interesting use case where a service provider was going from NSXV to T, and they built a whole new cluster for T. So, nice shiny hardware, much better specification. And in order to entice the customers over, they use reports to show them the data now and what the end state would be in terms of much more power, lower footprint, better energy consumption, everything else. And that was purely to justify the kind of move to a new architecture and operating system environment.
Nice.
All right. Anything else to show, Brandon? We covered it all.
No, I think that's a pretty good overview. I know there's a lot in there, but hopefully it gives you a good idea of what's possible.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this because I've heard for many years for service providers that they used to use some VM tools. I can't remember what they were called, but there used to be a tool that you could plug into vCenter for free, and it would give you some output of the environments. And obviously that is no longer here, hasn't been here for a long time. So like you say, doing all that custom stuff is hard work, and using freeware tools is hard work as well. This presents them with a repeatable assessment process, which they can monetize. They can get closer to the customer, understand their environment, upsell professional services, prioritize migrations, minimize risk, hopefully, and reduce their contract value to be much more competitive. Whew, all in one sentence.
I'm sold.
Where do I sign? All right, chaps. Listen, thank you very much for your time today, Brandon and Jorg. It's been great to walk through this, and I hope our service providers enjoy the benefits that it could bring. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks. Cheers.